Hey learners, welcome you all to this session where we'll be looking at the impact of real-time game engine in game development. So first of all, the first thing that we'll look at is how the game engines were created or what led to the idea of creating a game engine. Okay, just see my screen and try to guess which games these are. These two games that are actually displayed on the screen right now. Any ideas? Witcher 3 and Valorant. So essentially, these all games were created in a real-time game engine. And going to the next one. Today, what we are going to be doing is we are going to be looking at the logical breakdown of games. For example, we'll take a game called Contra and think about it, breaking it down in its or logical aspects. Then going ahead, we'll look at a game from the chat, try to break it down, and eventually look at the impact of the game engine, some programming languages used in game dev, then how to pick your game engine. This is one of the most sought out after doubt that I come across when people just start uh, getting into game dev. Then should you create your own game engine? Again, this question I've come across 1,000 times. Pretty interesting answer. And why some companies create their own game engines. So that is all what we are gonna be looking at today. Now going to the next one. So how game engines came to be. I'm just gonna make you visualize how they came to be. So first of all, we are gonna look at this game called Contra. Okay, so Contra, we have a lot of things in the game. If you imagine playing Contra, you have shooting, you have animations, you have, you know, the player colliding on the ground, player moving. Then we have some kind of input. Can you go ahead and list down the things that you think make up a game, essentially in in this fashion? Like you have enemies. If you think about Mario, right? Again, you have enemies there. You have some collision on the solid ground, some kind of player movement left and right. You also have jump input. So think in these terms and put down the breakdown that you think is there. Then you have some sounds as well, audio going ahead. Think in terms of Contra right now. Then eventually we are gonna be breaking down some more complex games. So essentially, Contra, if you think about it, is a platformer. Then you have some sprite management. Sprite is essentially the pictures that you do. Then there is some kind of bullet system. Different dresses or skins are there. Yeah, different animation of different gunfires. If you think about it in a deeper level, right, breaking that game down, then you can also see some challenges in creating that game, right? For example, how do you have the physics in the game? That is something big. Like how do you enable gravity? So we have studied in physics, right? Gravity is nothing but mass in essentially if you want to give anything weight, you need gravity. You multiply mass into gravity, you get some weight. So then gravity is nothing but a downward force, right? So if you think in all these terms, you'll get to understand there are so many systems underlying in just creating one game. So let's move on to the next slide. So if you think about it, there is input system, player move, then animation system. There are animators, right? If you talk about FIFA, if you imagine that game, so there are some animations going around, player moving left, right. Then if you think about collision on the ground, this collision is nothing but physics. Then enemies again have their own behavior. They are somewhat like AI, right? Not the best AI out there, but yes, in some sense, it's a pre-coded AI, and we know how exactly our enemies would behave in a certain condition. Like if you imagine some enemies in Mario, they would actually shoot axe at you, right? So the turtle enemies would actually slide left and right once you jump on them. So that is all actually programmed in some way. Then you have some power ups. Any idea about power up, guys? In Contra, you have power ups. In Mario, you have power ups. Just think of a game you love and name the power up that you love in that game. I'm looking at the chat. Okay, invincibility is there. That star, right? I can just hear that audio playing in my ears when you get that star. Big size fire, yeah, that is one. Mario has a power up to grow, right? Mario grows up when he eats a mushroom. Yeah. Subway Surfer jets, yeah, that's a great power up. Nitro boost in NFS is a great example. Again, Ramprasad, nice. So if you think about different games, games usually have a very similar structure, but these things like power ups, the mechanics, give a good flavor to your game. There are 1,000 platformers out there, but some of them like Braid, or if you imagine Dead Cells, these are very good platformers, or say Hollow Knight, because of the way the power ups are there. The mechanics are slightly little different, but very enjoyable. If I ask you about Mario versus Contra, there is a very these two are very different, but again the fun is there, platformer part is there, but the way it's implemented is very different. Okay, GTA 5 Franklin driving superpower, yeah, like all three of them have superpowers in some sense, yeah, nice. Then you have some collectibles, won't you agree? Like every game has some kind of collectible, if you think about it. If you go ahead, think about the coins, right? In the games you can actually go ahead and purchase stuff. Yeah, IGI has different kinds of guns with it. Then if you go ahead, think about the boss systems are there. Like you're actually going ahead fighting the boss. Boss has certain mechanics, like they go from left to right. Do you remember your first boss? So that brings back a lot of memories to me. Uh, I started my gaming with Mario, so Bowser was my first boss, and the second boss was actually in Prince of Persia that I encountered. Guys, do you remember the name of your first boss? We usually gamers, all of us do, right? Uh, Sometimes you are stuck on that, like in Dark Souls. If you encounter a boss, you're like stuck on that boss for a long time. You never forget the feeling of defeating the first boss. Okay, Venom in Spider-Man, yeah. So, and that's a crazy fight. I remember that. Spider-Man 2, some of the bosses were difficult. Like Rhino, defeating it first time is difficult. Bring back memories. Yeah. So essentially, there are like plenty of bosses. Okay, GTA Vice City, helicopter mission, Demolition Man. The name was Demolition Man for that mission, and it's not a boss, but feels like a boss level. Then Ari says, okay, Sand King. Yeah, so like a lot of these things bring back so many good memories. Temple Run, okay. Temple Run essentially don't have a boss if you think about it, but the ape running behind can be seen as one. Then if we go ahead, you have some dialogue system, okay, over there, like in Witcher 3, if you can imagine, you can choose your dialogue, and eventually the game becomes so complex. Whatever you do in the game has repercussion on the game, right? It almost feels like a world alive and reactive, like the world is reacting to your thought, your actions. It feels so awesome, right? So one boss that I would want to name, and those who have played the game would all remember, General Shepherd from Call of Duty, one of the most iconic bosses ever to be there, right? So that's a feeling altogether. Uh, and another one is Makarov, right? Those who know. Give me a OP in the chat if you have played Call of Duty. Give me an OP in the chat. Just OP, right? OP and you're done. Okay, uh, a lot of fans, Call of Duty fans. Nice. So going to the next one, guys. If we think about more things as a breakdown, you have loading new levels, save levels, core systems, right, win situations, you have collectible behaviors, right, different things behave differently, like uh for example, a power up would behave very differently, right, than a coin. So you have different collectible behaviors, like if you collect a gun, very different behavior. So essentially, these all things make up a game, say Contra, right? So let's try breaking down another game, right? Uh, enter the name of the game that you essentially love, right? And try to find out a breakdown. This is where you go ahead, think, and look at things. Just put in the chat your favorite game and the breakdown that you think is that for that game. Let me go back to the previous slide for your reference. Okay, Minecraft, Sunny, you are saying what is the breakdown? Think about identify any five things that are there in that game. Okay, Sniper Elite. I'm looking at the chat right now. So you have some games. Think of the breakdown. Without breaking down, you can never build a game or even design a game. That's a very essential skill. So that is the skill that led to game engine creation, and it will all connect. Okay, cracked walls, kind of physics that is used there. Joystick movement. Guys, take 5 minutes, think about it, and put it out in the chat. Your favorite game, and then break it down. Collateral damage. Yep, that is the piercing rounds, guns. Yep. French Cathedral. I guess you are looking at the 3D buildings aspect of it. Yeah, essentially. So animations are there. Yeah. So if you think about the game and if you look at all the things that I have written down, uh, does any of them apply to your game? If yes, put it down in the chat. I'm looking at the chat. In BGMI, different maps in the games. BGMI is a pretty big game, right? So it gives you a lot of learnings as a developer and designer. If you do the breakdown of it, essentially that breakdown would apply to a lot of different games as well. Score system, you have multiplayer system in BGI. Loading new level is needed. Save systems are needed. Then daily reward system is there. There's some collectible behavior, right? Some particle effects when you are actually shooting the gun, right? Different guns out there, a lot of 3D models. Then health system is there, a training map is there. So it also has some chat features if you think about it. So a lot of things are there in BGMI if you do a breakdown. uh, so guys, just think about your favorite game and put a breakdown. So Far Cry 3 is one of my favorite games, and when I look at it, right, so I can see each and everything that is written over here applying there. Input, moving left, right, forward, backward, player movement. So input enables the player movement. Then animation, right, when it the player takes out the gun, animation. Even Assassin's Creed, right, if you think about it, all these things apply. So just imagine when I'm saying, right, like colliding on the solid ground. I can imagine in Far Cry 3, Jason Brody, the character, going on the ground, right? Enemies, I can imagine all the enemies shooting at me, right? Was the greatest antagonist of all time, greatest boss. Uh, then we have power ups, right? Power ups in this come because it's a RPG like game, role playing. Then the power ups are actually the skill system in their collectibles. There are a lot of collectibles in the game. If you have played Far Cry 3, even Assassin's Creed, there are 1,000 collectibles. Name any game, I'll show you collectibles over there. And then if you think about boss system, right, there are different enemies with much more health than the other one. So God of War 4, again, a brilliant example, right? So there are trinkets in God of War 4 that you can collect over the like course of the game. Then you have some dialogue system essential to every game, right? Except from for Limbo. So some games don't use all the system, but essentially a lot of them would. Then loading new levels. If you open up a new area in Far Cry 3, you get there. Save system is there. Without saves, right, it would be very, very difficult. Like older games didn't have save system, so you have to do the game like in one go. So a game could be of maximum like what, 5 hours of length, maybe, or maybe 10 hours. So nowadays, games are about 100 hours of content, right? Scoring system to let you know how well you have played. In Angry Birds, you have this 3-star scoring system. Win situations, like when did you win over the game? So these situations are actually put in the behavior, collectible behavior again, you know. So what happened? Just imagine you all are game devs, right? Intelligent people, game devs are. So what they did, they say you created Contra. Now you guys, I ask you guys to create Mario. What would you do? Like Contra, for example, took like 3 years to create, right? Then you created that. Now I ask you to go ahead and create Mario. Would you start it from scratch? Is my question. So essentially, guys, you see a lot of similarities in all the games, right? So you break down any game and you will see 1,000 similarities. So essentially, to brief up all these similarities and put it up in different categories, you can see there is a physics category, right? And then you have some kind of input system category, particle system to make it look beautiful, sprite system or image system, collectible system, collider system, rendering graphics. How would you show a picture on the screen? So those who belong to CS background might know, right? There's a subject called computer graphics. That is where you learn to put like color different picture sorry color different pixels on the screen, right? One by one, just light up pixels. So that is something, if you had to write the code for, it would be like take crazy amount of time. Then you have some dialogue system, player movement, animation system, audio system. All these systems you created for say Contra. Now I ask you to create Mario. What would you say? Okay, we have this. What do? We just take it and reuse it? Does it make sense me saying reuse it? So what would you do? You just take all the things that can be reused and reuse it. True, false? Are you with me on that? So essentially, game developers, what they did, they said, okay, let's do one thing. We create a software. We create a software that essentially has all these systems in place, and a person can come in and use all these systems, right, to create games. So this is how these common system again and again used in each and every game led to the creation of the game engine. Game engine essentially what is a piece of software that allows you to visualize and add behavior to different things, plus also give you a platform to implement all the system that you see on the screen. Okay, so that was the genesis of the game engine. If you talk about even 20 years before, right, game engines just started to come into existence, and not a lot of game engine existed for people to use. Nowadays, you can go ahead after this session, you can pick up a game engine and try, building some game in it if you want. But essentially, like 20 years ago, there weren't any game engines. Whosoever wanted to create a game would have to go ahead, code everything from zero up and create a game. That is why if you see, nowadays, a lot of mobile games are coming up. A lot of people are doing that. You might have also heard in news a lot of, young children are going into, programming and gaming, trying to code their own apps. So that is essentially how it works, because the base work is already there. Yeah, indie devs essentially. Those who develop their own games are called indie devs. So, guys, any idea about what is AAA, AA games? The difference between indie, AA, and AAA is that the number of people involved and the scope of the game. If a team of 5 to 10 people are doing, you can call it an indie game. if essentially more than 10 people, right, 10 to say 50 people are there working on a game, and that game is more than some number of hours, say 20 hours, then you can call it a double A game. Essentially it's a very high quality game, but the scope of the game is a bit less than the triple A. So GTA 5, if you think, the scope of the game, God of War, these are triple A games. Okay. Then double A games, if you think about, Life is Strange is a double A game, right? Then if you think about like Haze Light Studio key games, essentially these are double A games. Then if you think about this Cuphead again, that's a double A game. Hellblade Cinema Sacrifice is a double A game, and then indie titles are essentially a very usually small titles. If you have played any indie title ever, would Mario come under double A? So for that time, I would put it in double A category, essentially even triple A for that time, because that time the memory was so low, right? They have put in so many tricks and techniques to get Mario working. If you look at how Mario was made, you will be fascinated. So essentially, what they did, Mario, all the mirror images that they had, like in the Mario, they cut it and keep the one part, and the other part they mirrored it from that existing. And if you have seen a lot of time, enemies would be blinking in Mario. It's because there was a very low memory. Play indie games. I would recommend you a game, Baba Is You. Go ahead, play that. And then Mother Gunship. If you really want to try something new, you are bored of games, go ahead, try that. You're not gonna, regret playing these two. Yeah, a lot of things going on right now. This creator economy is booming, and that is because this game engines came into play. So that is one of the you know impacts of game engine, that anyone can create a game now. It's just if you want to, right? Next up, if we look at, a lot of people ask me, if we have game engine, why do we need to program? So game engine essentially gives you all the system, but a lot of games have custom needs. Okay, so the need for Fruit Ninja would be very different. For any platformer or Mario or any game you can think of, Dead Cells, Transistor, all these games would have very different needs. So essentially the game engine provides you a skeleton on which you actually put in the soul by doing the programming, right? You program and you put in behaviors, and the models are actually the visual, the body of it, which can be seen. So these three together provide you a great experience. So next up, right, there are some, all game engine have all these common system as we saw, but these game engines have different languages. So if I ask you, why are there so many different languages in these game engines? Any ideas? Like, why so many languages? Why can't they just have one language and be like, done, we are happy with that? Think in terms of tools, right? Why would you use a pencil and not a pen? That kind of question. So if you derive the answer from that, you'll get an understanding. So guys, essentially, if I talk about C sharp, gives you a lot of advanced features, because made by Microsoft for .NET development majorly. But again, all those language features translate to high reliability. C++, one of the starting language, best for the performance, worst for the beginners who are actually going in and trying to code, because experienced programmers are usually going into C++ development. You have to do your own memory management and everything, even or at the lower system. C sharp gives you that. So GD script, again, a new one came in, that is being used in Go dot, Python, JS. So these are some popular languages, but the most popular of them is C sharp and C++. Go dot, guys, is a engine. Again, we are going to be seeing that in the next slide. DirectX is actually a library that enables you to, play games. Essentially, it was created to bridge the gap between, what your PC knows and how your game runs. Essentially, graphic capabilities is given to your Windows by DirectX. Plus, you can think of it like drivers. Okay, like when you put your keyboard and insert it in your like computer, so computer actually talks to the keyboard through the drivers, right? These drivers sit in between, so DirectX is something similar in that way. What is C and C++? Great question. C and C++ are languages essentially in which code is written, right? Computer doesn't understand our language, right? English, Hindi, French, it doesn't. So for it to understand what we want to say and what we want to get done in the computer, we have to learn a special language, that is this programming language, C and C++. There are many more, but these are the language. Going to the next one. So these are some game engines, right? You might have seen some logos appearing on different games, right? I've been playing games for a long time, so a lot of web games, if you see, would have this Unity ka logo, and you might think, what is this Unity? And some games you might come across would have Unreal logo. So these three are the most popular game engines, right? Each one with its own, best and worst. As a beginner, it is always advised you learn Unity game engine, and then eventually you can move on to any game engine, because all the systems that I showed you are same, right? Are same in each and every game engine. So once you learn it in one, you can translate that knowledge to others. So the language used for Unity, C Sharp, Unreal, C++, and then Godot engine is essentially GD script. And why do you use Unity engine? Is a question asked a lot of time. Any ideas? Anyone? Why go with Unity and not Unreal or Godot? So essentially, guys, Unity is first easier to learn, right? Then second, it even runs on a very low spec PC. You can run it on i3, right? If you are creating a basic hyper casual, but essentially it requires i5 and some graphic card if you really want to build a good game. Unreal, on the other hand, that is a beast. You can't tame without a good hardware. Reason, it requires i5 and a graphic card, but again it would just run somehow on that. You need i7 with a good graphic card to get the best out of Unreal. Otherwise the experience would be very bad. And Godot essentially, guys, is a open source engine. Unity and Unreal are not open source. Open source meaning you have access to the code of Godot, right? You can look at the code of Godot, change it. So if you tomorrow say, you're feeling like, let's go look at how game engines are built, Godot is your go-to game engine to look at how a game engine internally is coded, right? Unreal is best if you want to build some AAA title or very great fidelity of games, 3D games. Unity is best for mobile development and essentially 2D games. Even some 3D games it can pull off very well, right? So it just depends on what your requirement is, and then you choose it. Document in Godot is good, but Unity has so much tutorials. Unity essentially runs on the lowest spec hardware. That is the power, right? If you think in terms of monetization, a lot of businesses, if I own a business tomorrow, for example, I have my own gaming studio. What is the cost? The cost involves me giving my employees a laptop, right? And if I'm giving them the highest spec laptop, the good spec laptop cost around 60 70K. So you can think in terms of monetization. It's not just this one thing. It's easier to learn, or beginner friendly. It's also about the business part of things. There are some things that you can see, some things that are hidden. You have to change your perspective and think about that. So Unity has their new policy to get money from people, like when they're using the Unity engine. But if you're learning, it's free, and it's also free if your game is earning below 200k dollars, right? Then right now the norms of Unity have changed, and it's not applicable to 2024. They are still reviewing their monetization policy. So I guess, right, it won't be a shocker to all of us, because they already have a lot of backlash. Going to the next one, these three engine, right? So Red engine is used to make Witcher 3, right? Rage engine is used by Grand Theft Auto people. There is a reason they made their own game engines. We are gonna discuss that as well. Okay. So moving on to the next. So looking at all of it, right? Now you are ready to craft your own answer. What is the impact of this game engines or real-time game engines? If I ask you, right, you have heard all this gyan that I have given to you. Now go ahead, craft your own answer. So let me make you visualize the way you think and you craft answers is, you think, okay, what was before real-time game engine? What would have been there? They would code everything up, right? Again and again and again. Then, they would make their game. So there would be a big team involved. You think about that. Then it would have been costly, right? To have such a big team, right? Then you would also think only a select few people would be making their games. If I have an idea tomorrow, I'm not in gaming background or programming background. So hopefully, you won't be thinking at that time to create a game. Why? Because you have to go through creating the game engine first. You have to go through you know graphic design in terms of like programming. So there is a programmatical graphic uh, output that you need to learn so much about individual pixel, right? Physics, you need to learn physics, right? Just imagine what all you would need to learn to just create the game engine and then the game. What a humongous task. So the impact essentially is actually on economy, right? It created new jobs. Don't you agree? Game engines created new jobs. There is something called as a Unity developer job, Unreal developer job, right? Then game designer job, right? Then visual scripting jobs are also there. Yeah. If you think a bit deeper, right? And you can also think, people who do devlog on YouTube, right? These devloggers actually create their own game. It's not written over here. Just, uh, you know, you can think in terms of that, how it changed the world, right? And look at different people who are using it. If you think about indie game devs, right? These guys are actually, able to create such beautiful games. They wouldn't ever be able to create such beautiful games without a game engine, right? Then if you think about right, how advent of geo, right, brought in accessibility to YouTube and mobiles, brought in accessibility to YouTube, right? This is how game engines brought in accessibility to people to create games, right? Then game engine aid in monetization potential. How? A very good case study, if you think about Unreal Engine, right? Red engine is used by CDPR, CD Project Red, to create Witcher 3. But the problem is, while they created their own game engine, right, they have to create their own game engine as well as create a game, right? So now they shifted to Unreal Engine. All the overhead of creating the game engine is actually on the Unreal people now. They are just creating their own game. How beautiful it is, right? If earlier it would take 5 years to create a game, right? You have 200 people. If you calculate the cost, right? It would come up to, in just salaries, right, for 200, 300 people, 25K, it would come up to a crore, right? So essentially, if it's cut down by 2 years, right, they don't have to develop their own engine anymore. The game is shipped in 3 years. They make profit earlier, right? 2 years ka they have the profit, with them they can invest again, right? uh, they save in so much costs. Can you think about it? Just visualize that impact, then reduces the development time. That's awesome. That is a hyper casual exist. Hyper casual category would never exist without game engines. Why? Because who would want to code all the game engine just to make a hyper casual? Are you getting my idea what I'm trying to say? Like, uh, why would you do that, right? If essentially there's nothing to be made out of it eventually. Then it allowed scientific simulation, water simulations, right? It also gives a virtual world to test out AI capability like self-driving cars. It also gives a very special ability eventually evolving, that is AR VR in terms of medical, right? So these game engines eventually give you a virtual world in some sense, and this virtual world has a lot of capabilities. Metaverse is one. So these are the emerging capabilities, if you can think a few. So like, this potential is endless. It's how you think about craft, create, monetize, experience, right? So that is how you do that. Next up, how do you pick a game engine? So I actually, put in some of the questions that you are gonna be asking when you are gonna be picking your game engine. Which platform do you want to run your game on? Mobile is it? Go with Unity, right? Is it PC? Then you have to ask more questions, delve a bit deeper. Am I gonna be creating a game with high fidelity graphics? Then which engine should you choose? So essentially, there is one thing that Unity provides best in the class. Beautiful. You create a game for one platform, mobile. You just at a click of a button, you can actually port that game to like any other device. Just click switch platform and you're done. It would switch the platform and give you a build. Even Godot is good, but essentially, the community and tutorials, the support is not that good. 3D for Godot is not great. 2D is pretty good, right? For 2D, you can actually pick up Godot or Unity. Next up, you ask, what is the scope of my game, right? Is my game 2D or 3D? By scope, I mean, is it a hyper casual? Or am I gonna go and build a triple A or double A? Right? Triple A essentially a person lone warrior doesn't do that. Right? So don't think that you're gonna be building PUBG alone with a team. It's still a humongous task, right? So then going ahead with, what is the estimated time for my development cycle? Right? You need to ask that. Right? What is the, like, how much runway do I have to create a certain project, or do I want to monetize it? Do I want to get paid for the game I am creating? Then what is my business model? Because business model holds a big value. Like, if I'm choosing Unity or Unreal and the norms are not right for me, I might end up losing money. If my game is freemium and just imagine there are 1 million downloads, but the game is free. Now Unity asks me, for every download you give me 50 cents. So can you imagine how difficult it would be? So that can kill the model of freemium games eventually, if the pricing models are not right. So you have to think those things up. Right? What is the cost of my model on the engine I'm using? If you're thinking of monetizing it later, you have to think all of these things and then pick up a game engine, right? So I've been in a very brilliant conversation with some of the game devs. So what they said, they always tell me this one thing: go ahead, pick up any engine. If you have an idea, start working on it, and the engine would go ahead, teach it to yourself, right, eventually. So essentially, get that basics down and go there, pick it up. Oh, it might be in the first first time you won't pick the exactly the right engine, but eventually when you get a knack of things, you would most probably, learn how to pick up engine, what all features are there, which one would you use, which one would you want. Let me ask you, when should you create your own game engine? Does it even make sense for to make your own game engine ever? The answer is 90% of the time you don't. Right? If you are indie, never ever create your own game engine. For learning purposes, you can think, but in a week you are gonna be, just saying it's better I use a game engine and create a game rather than creating a game engine from which I create a game and then sell. So the answer to this question is, if you think why do companies create their own game engine, right? So as told you, right, 20 years ago, right, not a lot of game engines were there. Then some games by DNA require their own game engine. Witcher 3, when it was being created, there was no such game engine that could support high fidelity graphics, that could support, if you see the way the water shaders are, how huge the game is, then the dialogue system, that is non-linear dialogue system, they had to create it from the scratch. They had a problem that was not solved by the contemporary game engines. So that is when you create. Then if you have monetization problem, for example, we know, right, if GTA 6 is being created in, say, Unreal Engine, right, GTA 6 is a success, right, we all know that already. It's not even there, we know that. So I know if my IP is gonna be successful, why would I want to share even, like that 5% with Unreal? Because that 5% is a huge amount, right? In that 5%, maybe the company Rockstar can make their own game engine, and making their own game engine, essentially they did that. Why? Because if you see the reflections in that game, it's better than RTX reflection. To be very honest, like I actually played the game side by side, like Tomb Raider, Shadow of Tomb Raider, and GTA 5, and I was like, GTA the reflections are better, and that is the level of their game engine, the performance that they give, right? It's the difference between Apple and other companies. Okay, Apple, do you know the USP of Apple? It will all connect through. Price is one thing, yeah, they earn a lot, but why their product is best in the line? Think about it. Best in the line. Why? Okay, I'll ask you another question. When you go to a tailor, right, and when you get a ready-made shirt, why is the tailor-made shirt better looking on you, and why is that ready-made not that good of a fit? So essentially, he makes it for that one person, right? That shirt is made for Shubham only when tailor makes it. But when someone just makes it, it is very generic in nature, right? So when Apple makes its product, they have what? They have their software, they have their hardware. The software is optimized for hardware. That is their USP. That is why it's a walled garden. So when you want to create games, like the games that transcend stuff, reality, essentially, so that is when you want to have those tailored feature. Unreal is like that, ready-made shirt, right? But Rage Engine is specially made to support GTA like games. There is, I guess, Blizzard is the one, the creator of the game. I'm losing the name. That is a very popular card game. Popular, most popular card game. Hearthstone. Hearthstone. If you think about it, they made that game in Unity, but for other games, they actually created some custom game engines. If you look at the the case study of it, so you create your own game engines once you have one great successful IP, right? You have enough money, you can do that, right? There can be a lot of reasons to create one, but there can be a lot of reasons to not create one. And I'll leave you with just this one thought, right? Keep when you're going in, right, thinking about all these game engines, think about the genesis, visualize it, and towards the end, for you right now, it won't be the best thing to go ahead and create a game engine. Okay. You can also latch on to a few anchors. If you think about Crisis, it was ahead of its time, right? People would ask, will it play Crisis, right? When you are running the game Crisis, you can actually, double up your computer as a toaster or an oven as well at that time, because it would generate so much heat. So essentially, like, it just depends what your game needs, how much money do you have, or how would you want to take it forward. But general normal cases, you're gonna go with a pre-built game engine. And so that is how you're gonna look at things. uh, this is where I'll be concluding the session. And we actually learned on like impact of game engines on games, then usage of programming in real time games, logical breakdown. This logical breakdown is going to be helpful in each and everything that you look at, right? The problems that you break down, then game engines used in game development, should you or should you not you know create like uh, game engines, and how to pick your game engine. Thank you guys. That's been my time, and I hope you had fun.